I'm waiting for glue to set on something, so I thought I'd make a little video while I'm waiting for the glue to set. And I posted in my own page a picture from, it's a small scrap from my next pattern. However, lots of people commented on where I'd done an accent around my tags. Now I'm going to use a handmade tag as opposed to one that's got my brand name on it, and I've got some little scraps of faux leather. So I've literally, these are just bits that I've picked up off of my floor, but I've got 3 pieces that are different, and they are literally scraps. And the smallest one is pretty much the right size for my handmade tag, although it's a little bit high, it's a little bit too high. And you don't have to measure these things, you can kind of do them whichever measurement you want. You don't actually have to do them a specific measurement. It will depend on how big your tag is. So if you've got a branding tag that you use for your business and your tags are bigger, then you'll probably need a bigger piece of faux leather. Okay, I'm quite happy that that's about the right size. So how do I do it? I take another piece of faux leather that's considerably bigger, at least 1/4 of an inch all the way around. It's not made into a particularly neat rectangle, I'm literally just cutting it. And I'm just going to pop just a tiny little bit of glue, except for it's going to take ages to come out. In the middle, not around the outsides because I am going to stitch around the outsides. I'm just going to glue that piece centrally onto my first piece. Now what I'm going to do, because I'm just looking, I'm going to turn my board over so you can see. I think you can see better there. So I've glued it. It doesn't have to be sort of equidistant from top to bottom because we are going to trim that down. Now I'm going to leave long threads top and bottom, and I'm going to top stitch around that central panel using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now for this I generally reduce my stitch length down to about 3, because it means that you've got more chance of having a relatively even stitch and having the stitches end where you want them to. Otherwise you end up with little sort of half stitches which just look untidy. I'm using the thread that was in my machine, so it's a cream coloured thread, so it will show when I get to the end. It's not quite near enough to the end for my liking, so I'm just going to go forward just a fraction. And you see I just lifted my foot so that I could actually move my needle along a little bit. I'm going to go down to the bottom, back along this bottom edge. And back up the other side. And ideally you want to land in the last hole, in the first hole that you made stitch wise. Now mine there's probably a millimetre difference, but it's fine. I'm going to take my self-threading needle, and I'm going to, well, you've seen this before because you will have seen it in the sew along, and I'm going to take my threads from the front through to the back, and tie them off. So that just secures your stitching, and it means you don't have any back stitching on the front. If you're going to make a sort of an accented panel around your branding tag or your handmade tag or whatever you're using, then you need it, you're drawing the eye to it, so you need it to look really good, and you do not want any back stitching at all if you can help it. So I'm then going to take my ruler, and I am going to cut, and I'm going to have to stand up and do this because I can't see because the light's reflecting off of it, a border around my central accent piece that is 1/8 of an inch. And yes, I did say 1/8 of an inch, because that's what we do. That's what I like. 1/8 of an inch looks pretty scary, but it doesn't half look good when you've done your, once you've done your stitching. There we go. So now I have one piece. Now you could just use that because that's accented. However, living life on the edge, we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to use a little bit of glue on the back, and you should be able to hold your thread ends in with that. Don't go too close to the edge because you will be stitching again, and you don't want gummy stitches. And again, I've just taken that and I'm going to pop that. I'm just going to trim off the end there. I don't need that bit. And again, I'm just going to top stitch using a long thread at the beginning and the end. But I'm going to top stitch around that second layer. So yeah, you can see it there, the dark layer. So I'm top stitching around what is the brown layer now. And that's only 1/8 of an inch wide. So you're going to be stitching at 1/16 of an inch seam allowance, because you want to stitch halfway between the edge of your second layer of accent and the first layer that you've put on. So let's just go forward a fraction. Coming down the side. Oh, that'll be the door, but I'm not answering it because I'm videoing, so then we'll go along the bottom. That's all right. Husband has answered the door, which is all good. Again, I'm still only on this brown piece, which is only 1/8 of an inch wide. All this is layering. And you're only actually stitching through one layer of faux leather at a time, or 2 layers of faux leather at a time. So it looks really complicated, but it actually isn't. So I'm taking my threads from the front of my work, and again, pushing them back through to the back of my work so that I don't have any back stitching showing. No thick stitches, no anything. You can't tell where I've started and where I've stopped. Again, trim off those ends. And then you can, I mean, actually that's not awful, but so you could have a sort of a slightly bigger outline, or you could take it down to 1/8 of an inch again, or 1/4 of an inch, whatever, really whatever suits you. I'm just going to do, I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch because that's what I like. To stand up. I've got a little tiny bit of fluff on there, so I'm just going to remove it. The one thing I will say is that you really do need to use a rotary cutter to do this. Doing it with scissors, you're never ever going to get an accurate cut. So there we have the base for our tag, which has vanished on me. Now it's over here. And these tags have got, these are Cheap and Cheerfuls from China, have got two little prongs on them. So you're going to kind of work out where, more or less centrally. And if you need to mark with your with a pen or a chalk marker, then you can do. I'm just going to basically make holes through, because this faux leather does not allow me to mark it. It's so iridescent, it doesn't really give me much in the way of options for, oh, now I can't see where I've made the holes. That wasn't very clever. Okay, there's the hole. Don't know if they're big enough, but let's have a go. No, they're not. Okay, so let's do that again. I think I was just being a bit miserly with my craft knife. Now I see a lot of people use seam rippers to do this. I personally don't feel like I have enough control over what I'm doing with a seam ripper. So you're basically going through all of the layers of that you've just sewn together with your craft knife, just making the holes big enough to get your hardware through. Then you can pop your backing onto your tag, glue down those ends, and you can then top stitch around the outside and top stitch that onto, let me just grab a back for that. Have I got a back for it? Empty my box of backs. I'm sure I have one, I just don't have one to hand. Sorry, not very organised. So I'm fairly sure this is not the right backing for this one, but let's just go with it, shall we? So there we go. Let's just pop a little drop of glue. You can actually even use Pritt stick or whatever to hold these in. You don't actually need to glue them at all. I just tend to, because if I don't, then you can bet your life when I'm least expecting it, they'll end up poking out. Then you can position it on your bag, wherever it is you think you want it. And leaving long threads at the beginning and the end. And you could do this just as easily on a fabric bag. We're going to go, let's just move that out of the way because it's pushing on the side of my faux leather. Now the beauty of doing this like this is that you don't have to worry about the backing on your handmade tag or your craft tag or whatever your tag is, whether it's got your branding on it or what have you. The backing is not inside of the bag. Now whenever I use these tags normally, if you put them on without having a sort of a base layer like this, your prongs will be inside of your bag, so they're likely to rub against your lining. I would normally put duct tape or whatever over the prongs just to keep them from being sharp inside of the bag. That's not quite far enough. Let's just go a little bit further. But you don't need to do that with this because the prongs are completely enclosed. underneath your beautiful accent tag. Let me just do the same thing again. It's just repetitive. I mean, you could put as many layers as you wanted, really. I think 3 is probably as many as I would go, because it gets a bit bulky, it gets a bit sort of so that the whole thing stands too far forwards. So I've pushed my threads through to the back. Tie off. And there you go. It's all ready for you to make the rest of your bag up. Now you can do this inside. You could make this sort of thing and put it inside of your bag. It's just a 3-layered accent. I mean, this is particularly fabulous fabric, so it really shows up. But basically, that's how to do it. I've done this with Craftex tags that I printed on my domestic printer. I can't show you because they all have my branding on, but you can print tags on your domestic printer that you've designed yourself. There you go.